Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CDL podcast channel. We've got roster news. We've got roster mania starting post Major 2. Going to be a mini episode, solo episode here talking about that today. If you guys enjoy, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and check out the podcast, which is uploaded every Monday night, usually with my co-host Brock, but he is currently traveling overseas, so he won't be here for the next few episodes, but let's jump into it. We got big time roster news. Huke is in for Pred. That's the big one. We'll talk about the other few maybe after this one, but that's the big one that just dropped. The other ones are rumors. This one's official move. Pred has been dropped from OpTic. Looks like he is fully released, not benched or anything. And this time it seems like, the time is fully done on OpTic. Earlier in the year, it seemed like, it was potentially done where he was dropped and there was like maybe a talk that he could come back, but most people didn't think he would. And then he was brought back and it was like, okay, this is probably the last chance. I honestly didn't think he would be dropped again. I kind of thought when it seemed like they were for sure done with him and then they decided, to bring him back, I thought, it's probably pretty permanent. Like they probably won't drop him again, but then they continued to struggle, weren't performing well at all. And it was like, okay, maybe. And then the rumor started to fly and then here he is. He's gone for Huke. Wow. This is crazy. Like just coming into the year and like thinking about OpTic, obviously like, for the most part, last year, they were a good team. Obviously, they won a major early in the year, and they had the slump in Major 4 where they just couldn't beat anybody, kind of like this year, but not nearly as bad, I would say, I guess, because they were at least winning maps. But they couldn't win a series, and then all of a sudden they win champs, and it's like, all right, here they go. They're going to, run it this year. Maybe they won't be, like, amazing, but they'll still be a top 3 team is what we all figured, along with LAT and FaZe. And it just simply hasn't worked out. All the roster changes, all the turmoil. If you would have told me post Major 2, OpTic were no longer going to have Kenny and Pred, and they were both going to be like fully dropped and not for some like weird, personal reason where they had to like step away for a bit, I would have been like, oh yeah, okay, that sounds crazy. But just an absolute year from hell for OpTic, like coming off a champs win and absolutely everything has gone wrong for them. In terms of this move, I mean, it makes sense. Like, they're not performing. They can't win a map, and they were winning with Huke. They're probably just trying to, figure things out. I mean, we figured it's not going to be Dashy or shottzyy like ever gone. Like we always talk about, like Dashy and shottzyy are probably on this team until they retire, unless something weird happens. Because like OpTic kind of does this with their players. With Scump and Formal, it took like an absolute falling out where they just like were not getting along and weren't talking to each other in order to drop Formal off the team. And obviously, Scump was literally never going to be dropped. Like, Scump was the franchise player, and like with the way that OpTic does it with their branding and their content, like Scump was never getting dropped, and that's kind of basically what shottzyy is now, at least in my opinion. Like, shottzyy is basically the new Scump in terms of like, unless like something absolutely wild happens, he is never being dropped. He probably has the keys to the team, and he just is OpTic for the rest of his career. And Dashy's probably in the same boat. Maybe Dashy like a little less protected because we have seen him bench before, but like since they brought him back, I kind of feel like once again, unless something absolutely crazy happens, those two players are locked into the team. With the potential, out of the game issues that have been rumored with Pred and the fact that they already dropped him once this year, it's like he probably became more expendable in their eyes, which I really thought Pred was going to be OpTic for life. I thought it was going to be that trio until one of them retires, basically. But then everything obviously happened this year, and Pred no longer on the team. A wild turn of events, but let's actually talk specifically like who come in and what this means for the team. I do think they get better immediately. I mean, like Huke, when they had him, was better. Huke is probably a better player in this specific title than Pred. We can kind of talk like what this means long term. Like maybe like in the long term, it isn't like the greatest move for them because Pred probably has a more successful career ahead of him because Huke is so much further into his career. But you never know. Huke is still a really good player. If Huke were to, win an event this year for OpTic or something, I don't think that happens. But if he were, obviously, like the move would be successful. But you have to assume Pred probably has a longer career ahead of him just because he's been playing for so much less of a time. I mean, Huke's been playing since AW. Obviously some breaks, in between there with age restrictions and stuff. But Huke's been playing forever, so you figure Pred probably has a longer career. But this is more of a short-term move to me. Like, I really think they're probably retooling in the offseason once we see like what the free agent market looks like. Like, unless they really, really perform better than I believe they're going to for the rest of the year and like win some events, which I don't think they will. But if they do, they probably keep the roster. But in all likelihood, I think they go into the offseason and they'd probably just disguise as like a 1-year rental for them. And Huke most likely is like, unless they win a ring or something, maybe they keep Huke on finally and give him a long-term deal. But man, Huke is just being like just brought up, sent down, brought up, sent down. Like OpTic is just like Huke's just like their like saving grace. It seems like when everything goes bad in whatever year, they're just like, all right, Huke, we'll bring you in, and they just like pick him up like Scump retires. Okay, Huke, we'll bring you in, drop him. All right, Pred has to step down, bring in Huke. Okay, we drop him. All right, Pred struggling, bring in Huke. It's just like Huke is just always there to save them, and it's like usually there's not a player this good available. So I do think they get better in the short term. I mean, Huke and shottzyy seem to work better in this specific title. They have a lot of chemistry there. He has the chemistry with Dashy and Skies. Is probably going to be a good gap filler. Like this team is going to become solid again, in my opinion. Like they're going to start winning series. I still definitely don't think they're on the level of like an LAT, a FaZe, a Surge right now, but I think they have a better chance to get there, I would say. But yeah, I don't see them breaking through into the top 3 like we expected them to be to start the year. But I do think they improve because I think Huke is a better fit in this game with shottzyy and just in general. I think they're going to be good online again. We'll see. I have a feeling that there's only 5 matches to split, and I think they have a decently easy schedule. I'm going to just go out on a limb and say I think OpTic wins 3 plus matches. I don't think it's going to be more than 4 because I do think they play FaZe, so they probably lose that for sure. But I do think they improve. Kind of crazy to just see this roster move, though. Like, just from where we expected with OpTic coming off a champs win to where we are now, just roster moves everywhere. It's crazy, but we'll see if it's long-term or not. Then the next rumor, Arcitys being picked up, rumored for Minnesota. I don't think it's actually been, made official at this point, but Rocker are apparently in talks to bring Arcitys to their starting lineup for Paul X, which would obviously be a big W in my opinion. Like even if it doesn't work out, it's a good move. Like I feel like when people hear you say that, it's like they don't understand what you mean by that, but it's like, yes, it's a good move. Even if it doesn't work out, it's a good risk to take because Arcitys is, a veteran player. He struggled his last few stints in the league, but like Paul is playing extremely, extremely poor right now. And like Nero and Geo had their ups and downs in stage 2. They were both very good in stage 1, had their ups and downs in stage 2, but I feel like with a more consistent AR, they will also become more consistent. Like Estriel had a good stage 2. Estriel and Nero are a good sub duo. Geo is a very solid slaying AR. He can do it. And Arcitys, I just feel like he brings a veteran presence to this team. Like more consistent slaying, I would hope. He can be a good S&D player because Paul is usually a good S&D player. Maybe not as much this year, but usually he is a good S&D player. But I think Arcitys can just bring more of a standard to the team, a veteran presence. And if he can just consistently be around like at 0.95 to a 1, just be more consistent in this lane. Because like at Major 2, Paul dropped a 0.5. So like if Arcitys can just come in and be at that 0.9 to 1 range and bring a lot of comms, bring a lot of leadership, I think Rocker can become not a top team, but I think they can become more of that consistent top 6 team where, we see them maybe make it to a winners round 2, win some matches online, consistently be winning matches online and qualify for champs. I think it's a good move. Will it work out? We're not 100% sure yet, but I like the thought behind the move. It was one of the guys I mentioned. I'm like, Fellow or Arcitys for this team just makes so much sense. They just need a veteran that can bring consistency. And I hope Arcitys is truly back and can do that because this team could be very solid. And then the last move for any of you that are listening, it's one I'm excited about because obviously any of you that are longtime listeners or tune in know my favorite player is Kenny. My favorite player in the CDL and CDL history. He's my guy. And it looks like he's headed to the team that I really like, which is funny. The team that I kind of was like, yeah, I'm cheering for this team this year because I love Tej and I love Slasher and I like Gwyn. But I like a lot of the older players because, I've been watching for so long that like the older guys that are still doing it, your Attach, your Slasher, your Tej. It's just so funny to call Tej an older guy. But the guys that have been playing for a long time, I kind of like those players and gravitate towards those players just because, I've been watching for a while. So I like seeing those players still doing well. So this was like my favorite team this year just because I like the group of players. And I also like Vivid a lot. Brock and I are from Wisconsin. He's the one pro from Wisconsin, so we always supported him. But my favorite player is headed to a team that I really like. It sounds like Kenny headed to Ravens. I like the move because I think Kenny has a higher potential than Vivid. Vivid has been pretty poor. As much as I like him, he's been pretty poor in this game, especially for a team where Slasher has been playing well for a lot of this year. Obviously, the Major, they didn't play their best. So kind of apart from Major 2, they've all been playing pretty well this year. Besides Vivid, he's been pretty inconsistent. Slasher's been good. Tej has been having a career year. And Gwyn has been very good online. Maybe hasn't been the same on LAN, but He's been very good online. Like they have 3 players that are playing overall pretty well this year. Now, if they get Kenny how he was playing on OpTic, it's not going to do much because Kenny's been worse than Vivid this year. I just think it's good to bet on this because I just don't think I don't see Vivid improving too much from where he's at. I think he's kind of where he is. He's like a solid player, but he doesn't really raise your ceiling to be able to beat the top teams. Where if you get the best version of Kenny, he can raise your ceiling and potentially help you to beat those top teams. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not saying Kenny's going to walk in and be the normal Kenny we've seen because we haven't seen it this year. He's been playing very, very poorly. Even as like his biggest fan, he's been playing terribly. But I think it does raise their potential because I'll put it like this. Vivid and Kenny are both playing poor. Vivid's playing better than Kenny is so far this year, but they're both playing pretty poorly, like below the standard they need to win. If you had to bet on one at champs to potentially raise their level or for the rest of the year to potentially raise their level, who has the higher ceiling? You can't possibly argue it's Vivid. He hasn't won an event in his career, whereas Kenny obviously multiple rings, a bunch of wins, double-digit wins on his career. Like, if they were to both raise their level of play to their highest potential, I believe, obviously, can't even argue, Kenny's potential is higher. So I like them taking a risk because, I mean, what's the point? Like, right now, this roster that they have is not winning. They will not win an event. They will not win champs. I still don't think they probably win an event or champs with Kenny, but at least they have a higher potential because they add a 2-time world champion to this roster. So maybe they have a higher potential to do something. It could flop, but the way I look at it is take a risk for an all-time great player and see if he can give you lightning in a bottle in one run versus, their other team, they qualify for champs. They're like, if they get a top 4, it's like a miracle. Like they're not beating any of the top teams with their current roster. So just take a risk. It might implode. Who knows? But I like the move because you're at least, taking a chance on a roster that you're not going to win with. All right. That's going to do it for this one. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. If you're on the audio platforms, if I upload this there, drop a follow, drop a 5-star review. Check us out on Monday nights. Brock's my co-host. We just do a weekly podcast normally. And every once in a while when there's roster news, I upload these little mini episodes. So check out the channel for the podcast on Monday nights. Like I said, Brock is traveling overseas right now, so he won't be on the last episode or this next episode coming out, but then he'll be back. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next week on the podcast.